And if we want to just pause for a moment and just think about what he has meant to the sport more overall, or even that conference, the SEC, in a lot of ways, Nick built what we know to be the SEC. You know, before he got to LSU, the SEC was not the dominant conference in the country. And candidly, not really even close. I mean, yes, they had some great teams, and I don't want to disparage Steve Spurrier because obviously he did a tremendous job at Florida, and Philip Fulmer was doing a great job at Tennessee, and those teams won national championships. And even Gene Stallings in the early 90s won a national championship, that great Sugar Bowl victory. So it's not like, the SEC was non-existent. That's not what I'm trying to say, but it certainly wasn't the dominant force that it is today. The dominant force that it is today started when Nick Saban got to LSU. Mike Slive, his vision, Saban gets to LSU, Urban Meyer gets to Florida. They start to win. They start to compete. Greg Sankey becomes the commissioner, and the dominance ensued in 2006 with Meyer's Florida team, and then it just continued. Alabama beats Texas, and then here we go. 15 straight years that they earn, at least at some point during the season, a number one ranking. He's responsible for that. Everybody else in that conference had to chase him. The level that they all had to get to win a national championship, whether it was LSU, whether it was Auburn, whether it was Georgia, they all had to deal with Alabama. He was the standard. He is the standard. He was the standard, which is why that conference is where it's at. They have been and are the best conference in the country for the last 15 years because of Nick Saban. And that has really shaped college football. It has shaped the way the other conferences have tried to chase that. All right. And some of them haven't. And this guy, and the way that he went about it, I highly respect. I think the best compliment anybody like me can pay a coach, and I've said this about a guy like Bob Stoops, I've said this about. I would have loved to play for Nick Saban. Now, I was clearly not good enough to play for Nick Saban. Maybe I could have walked on or something along those lines. But just learn from him. Be mentored. Listen to him. Can you imagine getting to sit in front of Nick Saban and listen to him speak about motivation, standard, about creating value, all those things? I mean, just absolute gems, which is why our conversation last year was one of my favorite that I've ever sat down. I've done a lot of interviews, and we're going to do more Big Noon conversations this offseason here on the show. But that one really was, in a lot of ways, my favorite. One, I don't get a chance to talk with Nick Saban a lot because we don't cover the SEC. But I wanted to ask him questions that I knew he would give really deep and thoughtful answers to. And I've got a couple that I want to talk about because I hope that he is not just going to go and sit in his lake house and be like super retired. I hope that Nick Saban is going to still be involved in the sport to some degree. And I have an idea. And let's start by listening to a couple of those sound bites from Big Noon Conversations. This is Nick and I last year in Tuscaloosa.
If you were to start to address some of the issues in college football, where would you start?
Well, I think you have to create a balance between how much do you take and how much do you give.
Okay.
We're giving people scholarships. We're creating name, image, and likeness opportunities. But what is their commitment? I mean, there's no place in the world where you don't have a contract. If you're going to receive benefits, you have a contract and an obligation to do a certain job. So when you can opt out, transfer, do whatever you want, whenever you want, I'm not sure the balance is quite right. Mm-hmm. I know there's a lot of people out there that are much more qualified than me that are trying to figure out how do we fix this. But I think we do need to create some balance, because I think at the end of the day, when you create an atmosphere where somebody's tentatively committed to what they're trying to accomplish, you have to evaluate, is that really a good thing?
Sure.
Because we all need to be totally committed to whatever our goals and aspirations are, the sense of purpose that we have, if we're going to have a chance to be successful.
Man, every time I write it down, that's why if you're watching, I'm just writing down more of what he said. A lot to take away there, and obviously that deals with the structure of the sport. But you can tell that this guy understands, and he understands how to attack these problems, not just from a fan's perspective or a coach's perspective. If you actually really listen to what his answer there, and I said, there's a lot going on in college football. What would you fix? What would be the first thing? And he talks about this balance, okay? And when you really boil it down, you could say like, well, of course he's going to talk about that from a coach's perspective, but he's not. He's actually talking about it from a growth perspective, from a mentor's perspective. And he gets to this last line, and he gets to it through this balance between what you take and what you give. And then he starts talking about like, well, what is the commitment? We give these players a lot of things. What is their commitment in return when they can just opt out or transfer at any moment? And then he says, and this is the best line of them all, and this is the one where he's actually looking out for the player, whether they know it or not. He says, when someone's tentatively committed to what they're trying to accomplish, nothing good happens. That's exactly right. And it's true for every single one of us. It doesn't matter if we are a college football player or in our own careers as fathers or mothers or sons or daughters, whatever it is, in our marriages. If we are tentatively committed to what we're trying to accomplish, we will always fall short. Like, that's brilliant. And so I circle back to say like, well, he says in that answer, there's more qualified people than me trying to figure this out. No, there isn't. There isn't, Coach. On the off chance that he sees this, you, Coach Saban, are the most qualified to tackle the issues in college football. There's no doubt about it. Your perspective is absolutely correct because you understand the problem from the coach's perspective, from the program's perspective, and from the player's perspective, whether they realize it or not. These players, they want all of these things. And you know what? It's good that they have them at this point, but the structure needs to at least change a little bit because of the balance between what you take and what you give. You've got to give something back. There needs to be a contract. And it's because of the player's benefit. The last line, and I'll say it one more time. Somebody that is tentatively committed to what they're trying to accomplish never accomplishes that goal. Okay, so when we allow this autonomy and agency with players, it is good to a certain extent. And so I'm hoping that Coach will stay involved. There's one more comment from our Big Noon Conversations that I wanted to share, and here it is.
What I think we have a great sport, and I think it's been great for a lot of people for a lot of years, including myself, when I had the opportunity to play for Don James, who had a great impact on my life. Mm-hmm. I mean, even got me headed in a direction that has been, something that I've enjoyed tremendously for many, many years. So I do look at the sport and the big picture of the sport and what's best for the sport, and not just for football, but what are the consequences of some of the things that we're doing now if we continue down this road, and how it impacts other sports and how it impacts opportunities for other people to play other sports that may not be revenue producing sports, but yet for many, many years have created opportunities for people to get an education, yep, to better their quality of life down the road and have a chance to compete as college student athletes. I mean, I don't know, how does that impact all of them? So I really do try to think about what's best for the sport. And I mean, we have to deal with name, image, and likeness now, but when we started this a few years ago and I said, is this what we want college football to become? I got criticized for saying that. And now people are saying, whoa, maybe we should be looking at this a little closer because, maybe this isn't what we want college sports to become.
Oh, what a great answer. What a great answer. And if you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you'll know that I constantly talk about the fact that we do need someone looking out for the sport overall. And that person should be Coach Saban. Now, whether he wants to do that or not, I'm not sure. Whether it's an official position or not, I'm not sure. But this man has an opportunity to continue the legacy and continue the impact that he has had on our sport and others as well, as he mentioned in that answer, because he does look at it from a global perspective. It is a great sport. It does impact young men so positively. And the opportunities that football create, not just for football players and coaches, but also for every other athlete at the university. You know, I mean, like, there are very few athletic programs that are not football programs that make money. And all of those opportunities are created because of football. Now, there are people out there that hate that inconvenient truth, but it is true. And so the fact that we need to protect football, its structure, how it operates, is absolutely right. To protect the opportunities for everybody else in intercollegiate athletics. That big picture type thinking, that ability for him to think of the opportunity, not just for the football player, but the other athletes at the school. Also think about the football player, even while understanding that NIL opportunities are probably the right way to go, and transfer portal, and it's going to be there. Well, how do we maintain their commitment level so that they are not tentatively committed? Because if they're tentatively committed, they won't reach their objectives. You know, they won't create the value that they could possibly create for themselves moving forward. And what does he really want for people? He wants people, whether they're football players or not, non-revenue athletes, to create opportunities so they can better their quality of life. That's why Nick Saban, I'm hoping desperately, whether it's just ancillary or not, will stay involved with the sport, because his voice matters, in particular when we're wrestling with the structure right now at a really important time in the sport's history. So there's that. He's the great coach, right? He's obviously a tremendous mentor. And congratulations, Coach. You are the greatest to do it. In a lot of ways, we're never going to see anybody like you, or in particular, have the amount of success that we've seen you have over the last 17 years. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.